Now starting from the same point from where the last lecture was stopped regarding nasal and oral sounds, we were talking about consonants which are termed as stops. Now sounds in which there is no stoppage, which are continuous in the oral tract, are continuants. All the sounds of a language are either stops or continuants, which are non-stops. So there are two categories. One is stops and the other are continuants. तो या तो हम फ्रीक्वेंटली एक वर्ड को बोलते हैं या रुक कर स्ट्रेस लेवल के हिसाब से उसको ब्रेक कर देते हैं. तो जो साउंड ब्रेक होके आती है वो स्टॉप्स कहलाती है, इसकी कैटेगरी में आती है. और जो कॉन्टिन्यूसली चल रही है दैट इज कॉन्टिन्यूएंट्स. All the sounds of language are either stops or continuants. Non-nasal or oral stops are called plosives because the air that is blocked in the mouth explodes. क्योंकि एक धमाके के तौर पे वो बाहर आती है, जो एयर ब्लॉक की गई है तो उसे हम क्या कहते हैं? Plosives. When the closure is released. This explosion does not occur during the production of nasal stops because the air escapes continuously through the nose. तो जो nasal sounds हैं उनमें explosion नहीं होता, उनमें plosives नहीं होती. P, B and M are bilabial stops. With the airstream stopped at the mouth by the complete closure of the lips. P, B and M. T, D and N are alveolar stops. एक हो गया bilabial, एक है alveolar. Why alveolar? Because the tip of the tongue is touching on the top, which is alveolar. So these are called alveolar stops. The airstream is stopped by the tongue, making a complete closure at the alveolar ridge. K, G and N are velar stops with a complete closure at the velum. तो ये क्या है? Velar stops and different alphabets, different sounds being termed into different categories. Question mark where this symbol is, it is a glottal stop. Although there is no stoppage in air in the oral cavity, there is completely stopped at the glottis, at the back from where the air is coming out of your pharynx and larynx. C and J are palatal affricates with complete stop closures. We will describe them below as we move on. We have been discussing the sounds that occur in English. Some sounds including stops occur in other languages but not in English. For example, in Quechua, spoken in Bolivia and Peru, uvular stops occur, where the back of the tongue is raised and moved rewarded to form a complete closure with the uvula. The phonetic symbol Q denotes the voiceless version of this stop, which is the initial sound in the name of the language, Quechua. The voiced uvular stop G also occurs in Quechua. We find glottal stops in a number of languages such as Arabic. अब Arabic में क्या होता है? Glottal stops होते हैं क्योंकि अक्सर sounds from the glottis बोले जा रहे होते हैं. Fricatives क्या है? Now the next term, fricatives. Now a rough idea is that there is the process of friction going on, due to which it is called fricative. कोई resistance है, कोई friction है, कोई दो organs आपस में connect हो रहे हैं और उसके बाद उनसे sound produce हो रही है. Fricatives कौन कौन से हैं? In the production of some continuants, the airflow is so severely obstructed that it causes friction, and the sounds are therefore called fricatives. The sounds F, V, S, Z, O are pronounced in this manner. F and V are labiodental. F, V, labiodental. Lip and teeth, they produce obstruction and the process of friction takes place. The friction is created at the lips and the teeth, where a narrow passage permits the air to escape. The F is voiceless and the V is voiced. The following pairs follow this pattern. O and another symbol are the interdental fricatives, represented by TH in thin and then. The friction occurs at the opening between the tongue and the teeth, then, thin. S and Z are alveolar fricatives with the friction created at the alveolar ridge. S, Z. S and Z symbol are the palatal fricatives and contrast in such pairs as mission and measure. They are produced with friction created at the air passes between the tongue and the palate behind the alveolar ridge. In English, the voiced palatal fricative never begins words. इससे words start नहीं होते, except in words borrowed from French like genre. अब genre में जो pronunciation है उसमें again double S की sound आ रही है और यहाँ पे fricative आ रहा है. Which some English speakers produce with a French pronunciation. The voiceless palatal sound begins the words shoe and sure and ends the words rush and push. अब sure and shoe में start हो रहा है ये sound और rush and push में ending में है ये. Most modern English dialects do not include velar fricatives, although they occurred in an earlier stage of English in such words as right, night, enough and through. Where the GH sound occurs in the spelling, वहाँ पे क्या होता है? Fricative. Excuse me. Now where the ending is GH in the spelling, that dialect belongs to friction. Fricatives. If you raise the back of the tongue as if you were about to produce a K or G, but stop just short of touching the velum, you will produce a velar fricative. So, the moment you change the sound, the moment the obstruction is changed from one place to other, sound differs. The CH ending in the German pronunciation of the composer's name back is a velar fricative. Some speakers of modern English substitute a voiceless velar fricative in words like bucket and a voiced velar fricative in such words as wagon for the velar stops, especially in rapid informal speech. The IPA symbol for the voiceless velar fricative is X. उसको हम डिनोट करते हैं X से. And for the voiced velar fricative it is Y. अब ये voiced है, ये voiceless fricative, voiced fricative. So constantly we are being told about the difference between the sounds, how they are represented, how their symbols are mentioned in the dictionary when the word's pronunciation is broken into syllables. In languages like French, the velar trill R occurs as the sound represented by R in French words such as robe, red. Voiced glottal fricatives, which do not occur in English, do occur in other languages such as Czech. Speakers of Arabic produce pharyngeal fricatives by pulling the tongue root toward the back wall of the pharynx. जिस तरह का है, ग है, इसमें जो टंग है इट इज बीइंग पुल्ड टुवर्ड्स द बैक और ग्लॉटल से ये आवाज आती है. It is difficult to pull the tongue back far enough to make a complete pharyngeal stop closure, but both voiced and voiceless pharyngeal fricatives can be produced and can be distinguished from velar fricatives. All fricatives are continuants. Although the airstream is obstructed as it passes through the oral cavity, it is not completely stopped. Obstruction तो है, रुकती तो है, लेकिन मुकम्मल तौर पे ख़त्म नहीं होती. नेक्स्ट इज एफ्रिकेटिव्स. फ्रिकेटिव था जिसमें ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन थी, एफ्रिकेटिव्स जिसमें ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन नहीं होगी. सम साउंड्स आर प्रोड्यूस्ड by a stop closure followed immediately by a gradual release of the closure that produces an effect characteristic of a fricative. These sounds are affricatives. उनमें असर जरूर होता है फ्रिकेटिव का, लेकिन फौरन से वो साउंड कॉन्टिन्यूसली बाहर आ रही होती है, इसलिए वो एफ्रिकेटिव्स की कैटेगरी में आते हैं. द पैलेटल साउंड्स दैट बिगिन द वर्ड्स चर्च एंड जज are voiceless and voiced affricatives respectively. Phonetically, an affricative is a sequence of a stop plus a fricative. Sequence, continuation of a stop plus fricative. उसमें हमें स्टॉप भी नज़र आता है, उसमें हमें फ्रिक्शन भी नज़र आती है, लेकिन कॉन्टिन्यूएशन होती है, सीक्वेंस होता है, साउंड ब्रेक नहीं होती, एक्सप्लोजन नहीं होती. Thus the CH in church is the same as the sound combination T plus S. उसका ये सिंबल है. As you can see by pronouncing white shoes and white shoes rapidly, the two expressions are indistinguishable. White shoes and white shoes. अगर आप इसको रैपिडली बोलेंगे स्पीड के साथ तो इनमें डिस्टिंग्विश करना डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा. द वॉइसलेस एंड वॉइस्ड एफ्रिकेटिव्स आर सिंबलाइज्ड एज, उनके सिंबल्स उन्होंने दिए हुए हैं रिस्पेक्टिवली. इन द अमेरिकन ट्रेडिशन CJ आर द मोर कॉमन सिंबल्स फॉर दीज साउंड्स एंड आर यूज्ड इन दिस बुक. तो यहां पे हम क्या यूज कर रहे हैं? C with this is a one symbol and J with the same, this is the other symbol which is being used in this book. Because the air is stopped completely during the initial articulation of an affricative, these sounds are also classified as stops. क्योंकि जो साउंड है, जो एयर है, वो बिल्कुल स्टॉप हो जाती है during producing these words, therefore they are called as stops. The third one is liquids. In the production of the sounds L and R, there is some obstruction in the airstream in the mouth, but not enough to cause any real constriction or friction. These sounds are liquids. The lateral liquid L and the retroflex liquid R are described in the earlier alveolar section. हमने पहले भी इसके बारे में पढ़ा था. They are both voice sounds in some contexts. The liquids sound similar as they do to Dennis in the cartoon. वो भी आप फिगर देख सकते हैं. Dennis the Menace, used by permission of Hank Catchman and by North America Syndicate. Who is making all those mistakes? They are always passing the correction plate. As mentioned earlier, the R sounds that occur in various dialects of English and in various languages differ somewhat from each other. We are using the symbol R for this whole class of sounds. An alveolar trilled R occurs in many languages such as Spanish. In addition, uvular trills occur produced by vibrating the uvula. Some French speakers use uvular trills in the pronunciation of R. Others use uvular fricatives. In yet other languages, the R is produced by a single tap or flap of the tongue against the alveolar ridge. R. And we sometimes call that sound a flap. R की sound को हम flap भी कहते हैं. In Spanish, both the trilled R and the flap occur. The former in perro, dog, and the later in pero, but. Some speakers of British English pronounce the R in the word very as a flap, very. It sounds like a very fast D. Most American speakers produce a flap instead of a T or D in words like writer, rider, later, and later. The IPS symbol for the alveolar tap or flap is R. अब जिसका जो IPS symbol है वो है this. American linguists often use the uppercase D to represent this sound. और American linguistics जो हैं वो uppercase of D यूज करते हैं इस साउंड को represent करने के लिए. ब्रिटिश ये वाला सिंबल यूज करते हैं. In English, L and R are regularly voiced when they follow voiceless sounds as in please and price. They may be partially devoiced. That is, the voicing doesn't begin until part way through the consonant. Many languages have a voiceless L as an independent sound, in which case it is actually a fricative. Welsh is such a language. The name Lloyd in Welsh starts with the voiceless fricative L. अब इसमें डबल L है लेकिन यहाँ पे इसकी कोई साउंड नहीं है. Some languages may lack liquids entirely or may have only a single one. The Cantonese dialect of Chinese has the single liquid L. Some English words are difficult for Cantonese speakers to pronounce, and they may substitute an L for an R when speaking English. The reason that speakers of languages with only one liquid tend to substitute that sound for the non-occurring liquid is the acoustic similarity. Acoustic. अब acoustic क्या होता है? गूंज, आवाज, शिद्दत, उसे हम acoustic कहते हैं of these sounds. This auditory similarity is the reason that linguists group them in one class, and why they function as a single class of sounds in certain circumstances. For example, in English, the only two consonants that occur after an initial K, G and P or B are the liquids L and R. Thus we have crate, clock, plate, pray, bleak, break, but no word starting with PS, BT, PK and so on. Notice that in words like psychology or pterodactyl, the P is not pronounced. Similarly, in night or not, the K is not pronounced, although at an earlier stage of English it was. पहले बोला जाता था, लेकिन अब it is silent. Next is glides. Glides क्या होते हैं? What sounds are called as glides? The sounds J and W, the initial sounds of U and WU, are produced with little or no obstruction of the airstream in the mouth. Continuously बोला जाता है. They are always preceded or followed directly by a vowel. In articulating J or W, the tongue moves rapidly in gliding fashion either toward or away from the neighboring vowel. Hence the term glide, क्योंकि वो एक किस्म की ग्लाइड ले रही है, फ्लाइट ले रही है, उड़ रही है, पास कर रही है साइड से, तो उसे हम ग्लाइड कहते हैं. ग्लाइड्स आर ट्रांजिशनल साउंड्स दैट आर समटाइम्स कॉल्ड सेमी वॉवल्स भी कहते हैं. द ग्लाइड जेल इज अ पैलेटल साउंड. द ब्लेड ऑफ द टंग, द फ्रंट पार्ट माइनस द टिप, is raised toward the hard palate in a position almost identical to that in producing the vowel sound I in the word beat. In pronouncing U, the tongue moves rapidly from the J to U vowel. U. The glide W is produced by both raising the back of the tongue toward the velum and simultaneously rounding the lips. W. It is thus a labio-velar glide. इसलिए इसको हम क्या कहते हैं? Labio-velar glide. और a rounded velar glide या rounded velar glide कहते हैं W को. In a dialect of English where speakers have different pronunciations for the words which and which, the velar glide in the first word is voiceless, symbolized as inverted W and upside down W, and in the second word it is voiced, symbolized as W. When the pronunciation of the two words is the same, it is the voiced W. The position of the tongue and the lips for W is similar that for producing the vowel sound in suit. No, sweet. It is not suit, it is sweet. Suit. In pronouncing V, WI, the tongue moves rapidly from the W to the I vowel V. Now, here we are done with nasal and oral sounds. You go through the lecture, open your textbook, read from there, try to understand, comprehend, and if there is some question, you can ask in the WhatsApp group that we have created for the class. Thank you.